podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of spoken word entertainment. Get a free audiobook download of your choice when you sign up today. Log on to audiblepodcast.com/MacBreak video for details.
Welcome to MacBreak. Leo Laporte here, Alex Lindsay there from the Pixel Core, and Alex does something a lot. Actually, I do it a lot too. We squeeze video a lot. But he does it professionally, I do it for fun. And we're going to show you some programs that can be used for both.
Yeah, so we've got the basic one, which is what most of us have, is QuickTime Pro.
We should start by saying all video is compressed in some form. Even your DV is compressed. It's just not heavily compressed.
Well, DV is pretty heavily compressed, but everything is going through some kind of compression.
This video is so big, even a camera can't handle it. Certainly not a computer.
Right.
There's a lot of data. So we have to compress a little bit. But then these things are recompressors, right? They're taking compressed video and putting it in another format.
Exactly. And you don't want to do that too often. And you especially don't want to take a heavily compressed piece of video and then compress it some more. Right. You want to try to do something that's not very compressed and then compress it out. And the big thing that a lot
Why
of
would you recompress?
Well, I mean, one reason you might recompress is that you have a QuickTime. Your DV is compressed, but you want to make it available. You want to recompress it into MPEG-2 to put it on DVD.
Right.
Or
Sometimes
you may
they call that transcoding.
Transcoding, but you're really recompressing it.
Right.
I mean, so you're not. It's not lossless. There's little things getting beat up. And
does it kind of get uncompressed and recompressed?
Not really.
Like
it's not, because it's all the data is gone. If it's once it's been compressed, the data's kind of gone, and so you're limited to whatever's there. Now, one thing that's interesting about compression is that sometimes compression can help. So one of the things that Kenji Kato figured out, doing a lot of work for YouTube, was that if you did H.264 before you put it up on YouTube, you actually got a better result, because the H.264 in QuickTime or in whatever he was
smarter than the encoder YouTube's using.
Exactly. And so what it did is it already got it into smaller, and YouTube just took the quantization that was already going on there and just kept it all the way through.
This is an example of how what a black art this is. It's almost trial and error in many cases.
There is the one thing that before we get into the actual programs, one of the things you always want to do is you want to know that there are two different kinds of compression that you're generally doing: temporal and spatial. Spatial is like JPEG. We're going to look at one image and try to make colors that are similar, just block them together. Temporal is compressing between frames, and you're just mixing those two together. That's all you're doing to get what you're looking at. And
because a movie is ultimately temporal, any video is ultimately temporal, this is a way to actually get better compression than spatial compression, because you have a keyframe and you have another keyframe, and you can actually.
And if the camera's not moving very much, you get a much better compression because the pixels aren't changing very much.
Right.
It's big handheld shots, Born Identity kind of, the Born Identity, and a lot of
bad.
people love that on the web,
but
that makes really big files or really bad files.
Well, so for instance, we have a static background here. Everything's static except for us.
And MacBreak is very efficient because of that.
Yeah, we can compress it down more, because you only compress this once.
Exactly.
In a keyframe, and then you say, and just lots of that until the next keyframe.
Exactly. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually do that compression. The one that most of us know about is QuickTime Pro. And if you don't have QuickTime Pro, QuickTime...
It's $30.
It's $30. It is, you got to have it for many, many, many different reasons. QuickTime Pro is a must-have application.
Apple took away some of the reasons, like you used to have to pay to get full screen video. Now you can do that.
Admittedly, if all you're doing is playing QuickTimes,
you probably don't need Pro.
You don't need it. But if you're going to do anything with your QuickTime,
saving it out in a different format, for instance,
or saving it out in a different format, clumping a couple of them together, changing the audio, trimming, because there's little things hidden in here. So if I hit Command J, I can go in here and look at the different tracks that are here. I can look at the audio settings. For instance, if my video is isn't quite, loud enough, there's actually a way to go in here and turn this up another 6 dB, and that's in the playback, and it's just saying, on top of whatever maximum is on my Mac, make it a little louder.
Interesting.
So there's little things in here, that kind of stuff you don't have access to. I can extract this one soundtrack into its own file.
That's really handy. I do that a lot.
There's in the video tracks, I have lots of little settings about how it displays, and
you can rotate it, which is great. I sometimes with my still camera take a movie sideways. This lets you rotate it. Back to a normal, so it's normal.
So it's back to normal. So these are some of the things that you want QuickTime for. You got to have it if you're doing any kind of work with it. Now,
That's about what, $30 for?
It's about $30.
Okay.
Now you can also, for something that's, if you're trying to stay really inexpensive and free, you have something like iSquint.
I actually use this a lot.
You use iSquint?
Well, I have its big brother now, Visual Hub. Before
Right.
I got Visual Hub, it's the same company, TechSpansion. iSquint just really does two things.
Right.
It optimizes the video for an iPod or optimizes it for television, and that's about it.
And if I drag a video in here, you can see it here, and I just hit start, and it would be, I can decide where I want to save it.
So people often ask, how do I get video on my iPod? I've got a movie that I've ripped. I use Handbrake or whatever, and I want to now put it on my iPod. iSquint is very straightforward.
Now you can do that directly from Handbrake as well.
Right.
So
Handbrake,
Handbrake,
if you've already ripped it or you downloaded it or
exactly,
whatever.
but definitely if you already have a QuickTime, you got it from somewhere, and you're trying to get it onto your iPod, iSquint is a fantastic free little application that, and of course what they're trying to upsell you to.
Upsell, right.
And you don't have to upsell very far. Is you can go to Visual Hub.
Again, like QuickTime Pro, I think everybody should have this. $23.
$23. I mean, it's and this is a big jump when it comes to doing compression. This is a big, and I have to admit, I was a little.
Yeah, you're a pro.
I don't need this, But here's one of the things it does that you can't do in QuickTime.
Right to Flash.
And that's the thing. That's what we bought it for. But it is, it's a $23 application that uses XGrid encoding.
What is that?
This means that you can actually go out to a bunch of different processors.
If you have four computers in your house, you can have them all work on the same file.
Exactly.
Wow,
so
that's cool.
So this is, and I've been told, and I haven't confirmed this myself, that you can actually there's ways to incorporate PC nodes and so on and so forth into the system. So
now I have to say, I always turn the quality. If you have a fast computer, turn the quality all the way up to go nuts. I usually use H.264 when it gives me the choice. It won't in Flash, obviously, but in iTunes or PSP, it will. And it gets, sometimes it actually looks better than it did originally.
Which
is exactly
it's not
intuitive,
yeah,
but
how does that happen?
Sometimes actually.
Sometimes the process of compression can actually increase the contrast a little bit, and sometimes that makes it appear like it's better.
Also, and I think one of the reasons it looks better sometimes for me is these big fat files. Sometimes the computer, or more likely the Apple TV, can't keep up. So I have stuttering, hesitation, frame drops. By recompressing it to a smaller file, you'd think that it would degrade it, but it gets rid of all the frame drops and it gets rid of all the stuttering, and now it plays back beautifully. So that's why I turn it up all the way. Now, I love this. You press the advance button.
You'll screw it all up.
You can change this stuff. I have yet to use this button. You might want to.
There's a lot of things in here I could see that I might want to do, but like stuff like 2-pass or those types of things. I have to admit that most of the time we're so busy when we do H.264 that we never do 2-pass filtering just because I don't have the time.
This program is just. You see, with the simple presets, you don't have to worry about all these fancy things.
Right. So this is so for $23, another one of those things that if you're going to buy two things, getting QuickTime Pro to let you do just basic clipping together, and there's a lot of QuickTime tools as well as Visual Hub, and you've gone a long way. The next ones we're going to start talking about.
Those are the pro tools we're going to now.
Yeah. So the next.
Get Visual Hub.
Yeah,
$23.
Yeah.
If you download movies off the internet, if you rip movies. It's just so useful.
And there are a lot of production people who are doing real work with Visual Hub on a daily basis. Yeah, so it's definitely a
I use it for my
item.
Apple TV and on my iPhone all the time.
Now another one here is Sorensen Squeeze. Now this one's a lot more complicated.
This is a pro app.
Now you're getting a pro app. This is $600. It's not. We're no longer. This is almost an Alex. And so you're now getting into a situation where there's a lot more detail. Now what I have here now is I have all those formats that I saw before, but I can simply drag, these are all the different settings that I might want to have. Now this is, once again, for people who are doing this day to day, and I can drag it onto my job here. And now it's going to do that, but I also, I have to go out to 6 different formats.
That's very handy.
Now this is something you're not going to get with Visual Hub.
It's another step each time.
Exactly, and so this one, I can go out to that, but I can also say, I want to send this out to this as well. I can send this out to another higher quality version of 1080p.
We do that. Podcasters often do that.
Exactly.
They'll make 5 or 6 versions of anything.
And there are a lot of. I'm working with one company that has to put out 40 different versions of what they're doing. Wow. And so for a company like that, you have one video goes out to everyone. Now you can also do stuff like add filters. This is one I'd love to see in QuickTime, by the way. Normalize audio.
I can't believe they don't have it. That's such a simple thing to do.
Just like this is
that means
crazy.
getting all the audio to 0 dB.
Yeah, it just means that everything's as loud as it can go without distorting.
Right.
And it just amazes me that audio filter isn't sitting in there. Unless maybe I've missed it, but I've been there before and looked for it. Anyway, so you can build your own little filters and say it'll do all of whatever I have set it here, and it's my own little filter. Sorensen Squeeze, once again, it's the beginning of that. Another one like this is Cleaner. So Autodesk makes one called Cleaner. Does a lot of the stuff that's a bit like
Cleaner's
this.
older though, and probably not universal, I would guess.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think they have a commitment to moving it that much forward. And I think that Sorensen Squeeze is probably
How does this compare to Compressor, which is what comes with Final Cut Studio?
Well, one thing is if you're not using Final Cut Pro Studio, Compressor is very expensive because it's $1,300
because you have to buy the whole
and it comes
studio.
with Final Cut Pro.
You get some great stuff with it.
So it only comes with Final Cut Pro Studio. Now, if you already have Final Cut Pro Studio, you're probably not going to use Sorensen Squeeze. You're going to be using Compressor. This is not better than Compressor. Compressor has you're able to do all the batch processing. You're able to set it up. Now, I don't think the Compressor can go out to some of the formats that we're seeing here.
Yeah.
This one, you may
Real media, Windows Media Video. I don't think you're going to see that.
Some of those are in
Really?
Compressor, yeah,
Really?
but it doesn't have probably the full range. I mean, Compressor probably doesn't have the full range that Sorensen Squeeze has, but it has just about everything you'd want. One of the things that as I said, Compressor is integrated with Final Cut Pro. It's integrated with other things. Now, I have to say, we never actually use it that way.
Really?
Yeah, Compressor is it's not always stable.
So what do you use?
We use Compressor for stuff, but I'm saying we don't use it like you're in Final Cut.
That's part of the workflow.
If I'm in Final Cut, I can say go out to save out of Final Cut using Compressor.
Right.
If you do that, half the time it doesn't work correctly.
So
we save it out and then we take it
Compressor.
to Compressor. But Compressor lets you do that. It lets you use Xgrid so you can distribute it over the entire office. It lets you do a lot of that kind of control that really is it's a high-end compression tool. Right. And it works really, really well. But I think that...
How fast is it? On Visual Hub, even though I've turned it all the way up to Go Nuts, H.264, not using Xgrid, it's almost real time. In other words, an hour of video takes about an hour to transcode. Is it the same for Compressor?
Especially with H.264.
That's very
the settings.
time-consuming.
Every time you play with the settings, it can make massive changes in the quality. Right. We're using mostly 1080p. And so
it takes forever.
It takes longer than sometimes real time. To get it compressed.
Even on a quad.
A 3-minute piece might take 20 minutes to compress. Right. But H.264 that's one of the key pieces is that you put that 2-pass encoding on.
Right.
You do a couple of the wrong settings with some of these applications, especially H.264, and you jump from being a 1-hour compression to a 20-hour compression.
Right. And not necessarily even any better looking sometimes.
No,
I find.
Well, and the other thing is that what I do is I look for what I consider from my background the most challenging area, a 1-minute section. Where the camera's moving a lot, where there's a lot of different colors, and that's going to be the hardest it's going to be. And I grab 1 minute, and then I compress it a bunch of different ways. So it's real fast. It's going to pop through all of these, and then I compare where can I start cheating, and then I'll apply that to the entire video rather than trying to do the whole thing. That's a big mistake a lot of people make when they do compression.
So that's a really useful tip. So the most challenging means the most movement.
There's a lot of movement. And especially little movement like this is just enough.
Jerky camera.
So I got someone doing handheld. I have a lot of different color in the background. There's a lot moving in the frame.
Okay.
That's going to be probably some of the most challenging.
Pick that little section.
Grab that little section, or get a section that has a little bit of that and a lot of other pieces, and but exactly 1 minute. Because then what I do is I look at how long it took to compress, and I multiply it by the number of minutes that I have.
Oh, that's good.
And then I just go boom. Okay, I know that's going to be.
How long it's going to take.
It won't be exact, but it gives me a pretty good idea.
Right. I've seen you play with the sliders on QuickTime Pro as you're doing this, just to get really get an idea of what's going to happen with this thing.
Right. And we have it. There's an old MacBreak out there where we've actually talked about a lot of how we do this stuff. But
the behind-the-scenes ones are still very, very popular.
Yeah. And so if we go in here and we look at this QuickTime movie here, a lot of what we're doing. This is the kind of stuff, having the best quality, which is what it's naturally set at, is going to take forever.
Right.
So if I'm doing production work, I almost go a faster encode. Interesting. It's not going to be as pretty, but it's not going to be that bad either.
Right.
Medium is, I'll usually set it, somewhere in the, if we're doing it for the web, somewhere near high. Mm-hmm. If you set below medium, literally going right below medium app. QuickTime decides, you don't really care about your video. I mean, they just like whack at it. You know?
Let's just do whatever we want.
I almost never restrict the kilobits here on any application, and the reason is that the video is going up and down if you think of the data rate, and when it hits, it just clips, and suddenly your image falls apart really fast. And so I'd rather figure out what would take it to get below there rather than doing it there. I set this up for the web. I'll set this to like 200 because it will still lay natural keyframes when anything big happens. You know, so if I'm doing an edit and I'm jumping from camera 1 to camera 2, it'll naturally put a keyframe in there, and to make that kind of work. So those are some of the things that you have to think about as you're starting to kind of set up your compression.
Very good. So there's a couple of different compression technologies. There's QuickTime Pro, which you all have. You just have to pay the $30 to unlock it. If you have Final Cut Studio, you've got Compressor. I have to say, the Sorensen Squeeze looks pretty good for a pro.
If you're not using Final Cut Pro Studio,
Squeeze would be a good choice.
Then I would get Squeeze.
Okay.
And then you should just have Visual Hub and QuickTime Pro. You're going to find that you're going to need them. You know, so you want to buy those two.
For the end user, for the consumer, Visual Hub or maybe iSquint, depending on how much you're doing, and QuickTime Pro are really useful.
And as I said, there may be a handful of people that need Squeeze to add to what Compressor does, but for the most part, most people are going to be fine with just Compressor.
Thank you, Alex Lindsay. I mean, this guy knows. I think we should sometimes just sit down and let you play with video and show people what happens, because it's pretty amazing. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon, right? On another Mac Break.
This podcast is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of spoken word entertainment. Get a free audiobook download of your choice when you sign up today. Log on to audiblepodcast.com/MacBreakVideo for details.